Welcome to Monster Monday. So, over in Killer Flicks, it is Witch Week, as you know if you watched my Slasher Sunday review of Monster Man. There's a lot of witch movies that I had wanted to rewatch, and I still may watch them because I have till Friday before that week's up, and there's just so many that I would love to go back and revisit. So when I was thinking of Monster Monday, I was thinking, what's the movie I want to revisit the most? And the reason that I picked Robert Eggers' The Witch is because this is a film that, much like The Babadook, was, in my opinion, fairly mismarketed. The Babadook was way mismarketed. It was marketed as a monster movie, and it wasn't. I've talked about that on here enough. I'm not going to get into detail about that. But The Witch, this might not have been the marketing's fault as much as my expectations. And this is why I always say going into a film blind is best. I don't know what I was expecting from this movie the first time, but my expectations were not in check for sure. So I went into the movie, and opening night, of course, no surprise there. And I went with a date, actually, and I was kind of underwhelmed by it. Like, I thought it was really good. Like, I don't think anyone could argue this is a well-made film. Like, I don't know. This is one of those kinds of movies where I'm like, okay, because I'll say it right now. There's going to be a lot of people who will be in the comment threads. Let me just say it for you. Boring. Like, this movie's boring as shit, blah, blah, blah. Okay, you have every right to believe that. That's fine. I'm not going to argue that. I don't think so, but that doesn't really matter. But to say the movie isn't well made is just either I don't think you understand film at all, or you're just, letting your own biased opinion get in the way, and any film you don't like isn't well made. I mean, I know people like that. They're like, nope, it's shit. And I'm like, okay, I understand that you don't like it. But to say it's not a well-made movie is insane to me. And I'm not going to give examples right now because I don't want to fucking argue with people over the titles I would give at the moment. But let's, stick with this one. But the big reason I wanted to go back, in addition to everything I just said, was that this was a film I knew that when I went to rewatch it, I would love it. I just knew it. I knew it because I knew I would have my expectations in check. I would know what kind of movie to expect now. If I had went in blind, maybe I would have loved it on the first go. But because I went in and saw this already, have had a lot of time now, probably a year at least, right? Or more, God, maybe a couple years, wow. Yeah, 2 years, Jesus. I knew what to expect. So I went into it, and as expected, I definitely loved this movie this time. But I'm not going to, like, as I said earlier, when people are like, boring, all that stuff. I get that. Like, I understand why people would think this is boring, 100%. I didn't, but I get it. It's not one of these movies where I'm like, what are you talking about? How could you? No. If you don't like this style, if you're not into the period piece, if you're not into the long drawn out takes, if you're not into, them doing old English and all that stuff, then I get it. But anyways, so now that that's kind of out of the way on everything that I thought towards my rewatch and addressing all the problems I think that most people are going to say, like, oh, boring. They probably aren't even on this part yet. Or at all. They'll never even get here. They just see the title and they're just going to type in boring and move on. And that's fine. But let's talk about the movie as usual. Now, this is a directorial debut. Holy shit. This guy is going to make some amazing stuff. This is definitely one of the most impressive directorial debuts I've ever seen. The reason that I find this film to be so impressive, for me personally, is there's such an attention to detail when it comes to the authenticity of it. I don't know what the budget was exactly, but I know that this movie feels real. Yes, no, yes, no. No, I was not in the 1600s, okay? So I can't attest to that, obviously. I can't say whether or not. But it just feels so authentic. The fact that they went to, such lengths to make everything feel so real. The language, the costumes, the sets, all the different elements in the movie of like the gun and all sorts of different things. I was just blown away that this guy really, really cared to make this thing as realistic as possible to fit the time period in which you can tell this guy has an affinity for this time period. You can just tell that he's done tons and tons of research, and this is like his love letter to that era. So now this stars Anya Taylor-Joy when this is her first movie, really. I mean, she did this Viking movie before this, or Viking Quest, something. But that was like some little small, low budget, I don't even know what. I looked at it for like a second online. I was like, oh wow, so this is her first real film. I wouldn't mind watching that other one just because she's in it, and I think she's wonderful. She really has come into her own all of a sudden. I mean, in 2 years. I mean, it's only been 2 years since The Witch came out in 2016. And she's done so many movies now, and she's always incredible in them, outside of what you may think of certain movies that she's been in, like Morgan or something. I know a lot of people don't like that movie. I liked it. But Split and Thoroughbreds, and she's even got, a couple movies coming up right now that, I'm looking forward to, like Glass and the New Mutants. I don't know what's going on with that. I keep getting different reports every week. Like, Disney canned it. They're not going to can it. So, can it, okay, people? So anyway, oh yeah, all right. Let's stay on track. So this family gets banished from their little township that they're a part of. And so they go off into the wilderness, which is how the world is in, 1630, right? 1630, yeah. So it's funny to watch this kind of back to back with the Blair Witch, like Blair Witch 1, 2, and 3, like I just did, because I was talking about in my Blair Witch 1, I think. I can't remember which one. I think it was the Blair Witch Project, the first one. I was talking about how Heather and Mike and Josh went out and they die. Like, even if the Blair Witch wasn't out there, if they were lost long enough, they would die, right? And how soft humans have become. And how once upon a time, like this, 1630s, they get banished from their place. They're put out into the woods, just like the Blair Witch Project. Like, they're just out in the wilderness with the elements. They can't call in. There's no hope that anyone's coming to help them. Like, they're just out there forever, like for the rest of their lives. And what do? They build a fucking house, okay? They fucking plant crops. It's wild to think that someone, and this really happened. I mean, these are people that would be able to do this. They were just thrown out into the wilderness and they're like, all right, let's build a fucking house. That's amazing to me. Just who has the ability? There's people now that have that ability, but they're few and far between. So it was interesting watching these back to back and being like, that's how people used to be. And look at how wimpy we are now. But yeah, God, can we talk about the cinematography, the musical score, the acting, that attention to detail when it came to the Old English. And I think this is where a lot of people probably got lost. It is kind of hard to understand, because even though they're speaking English, technically, that's Old English, right? That's like the proper way to call it, right? I don't know. I think that's what they call it. It's hard to decipher a little bit. And you're listening. I was listening real hard. My kids were yelling in their bedroom, so I had to listen even a little harder. But it is. I mean, I can't tell you that I understood every single sentence because there's certain, there's certain things that are kind of lost in translation. You're just sitting there like, I think I know what that means, So I was trying my damnedest. I think I got everything though, and I know there's a lot of like endings to The Witch Explained or whatever. I've never watched one, but I thought that the ending of this was pretty cut and dry for the most part. There could be interpretations all day when it came to like characters and what they were doing and this and that, but as far as like the ending goes, I have my interpretation of it anyway, and I think that it's, as I said, in my opinion, cut and dry. Kind of how I was on Shutter Island. Like a lot of people are like, "Oh, there's like multiple different interpretations of that ending," and I guess maybe it's just kind of an arrogant prick. I was like, "No, there isn't." Like it's in my mind that ending is super cut and dry. Like I don't know, I don't see it any other way. I've watched the movie a few times now, and I'm just like, no, he just. I don't want to say anything because I don't want to give spoilers for people who hasn't seen it, who has not seen it. Wow, I don't even know English, like my own English, let alone Old English. Clearly, so they are out there, and Anya is playing. Her character is Thomason, and she's playing peekaboo with her little baby brother. And this is heavily featured in the trailer, and this is why I hate trailers so much, because that scene would have been amazing on the big screen. It would have been eerie as shit, but it's ruined by the 10 times I saw this trailer before movies I went and saw. But she's playing peekaboo, boom, 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 and then the kid, like, is just vanished. And we're talking, like, she's in a clearing, okay? So there is, like, 500 feet in front of her, the length of, like, a football field and a half, in front of her and around her sides and everything, where there's nothing. She's only covering her eyes for maybe 3-4 seconds. Like, no one can run that fucking fast, okay? So something snatched her sister, her little brother, that fast. And you just see like the twigs are like on a branch, like shaking, and that's all she sees. And she freaks out, and of course it never ever comes back, except for in the mom's fantasy. And then we get to see the witch bring a knife close to the baby's stomach. Actually kind of reminded me of Halloween 6, Curse of Michael Myers, when they're doing the little thorn thing on his stomach. Except for that kid, Steven, lived. And this kid, we don't get to see it actually die, but we do get to see her grinding it, the baby's meat up in this little bowl, and then just covering herself in like baby goo that she made from it. And then she goes outside, and this really pretty moon, and she like goes out, and you can see her just start to float up. So whatever ritual she's done, she's given herself the ability to fly. I thought that was all really good and super dark and grim, and just sets such a good tone, because it's not 15 minutes into the movie, so you're like, oh, this movie's fucking dark. And it is, I mean, throughout. And so the brother, Caleb, is going down to the creek, and he keeps checking out his sister's tits. This is what happens when you live out in the wilderness and you have no other women around or girls around besides your sister and your mother. Eventually, you're going to check out your sister's tits. It's just going to happen. I mean, no one wants to say that. I'll probably look like a creep for saying it, but eventually, especially in this time where it's just like, this is all he knows. There's nothing else. Nothing. I just thought that was funny that he was just out there and he's looking down her shirt like, oh, and then he gets all embarrassed when she looks up at him. I mean, everyone sneaks a peek at tits any chance they get when they're a kid, no matter who they're attached to. So that's nothing new, but I just, being out there, I think that just kind of shows how isolated they are. That this kid's he's probably like 12, something like that. He's starting to have his hormones coming into play, and he has a sexual desire, and his only viable option is his sister. She's one of the only ones around his age that, whatever. So I just, yeah, I don't know. It's kind of an interesting scene, but I thought it was just playing off of the isolation and the lack of options and all sorts of things like that, and how that can play with your mind. But as I said, at his age, he'd probably be checking out her tits, even if they lived in like a metropolitan city, because boys are fucking, they're stupid. And so now the crops won't grow; they are all tainted and gross and rotting, and the mom is just grieving so hard from the loss of her baby, which of course I can empathize there for sure. Well, sympathize. I haven't been able to empathize. Let's hope I never get to empathize, but I could definitely sympathize. And oh my god, I mean, to think about this, like all the fresh water that they have has to be brought back in a pail, and this is true. Like, this is how things used to be. You know, unless you had a well, you had to go down to the creek, which who knows how far away the creek was. I don't know how far away this little creek, this little river, whatever this thing is, but she has to carry it back on her head, probably like a fucking mile away. You'd think you'd build closer to the water, but I don't know. Maybe there's other hazards there or whatever. I don't know. But that was like the perfect clearing. So it was like the Kodak. We're gonna put this right here, and you don't have to buy land at that point. You think about that? Like, you just saw a place that looked beautiful, and you're like, just gonna build here. I don't gotta ask nobody for shit. I ain't gotta pay for anything. There's no bills. There's no anything. Although keeping it up is extremely difficult. The house, not any other things. Where else are we? Let's see. And the brother Caleb, I mean, they're such a religious family. I mean, at this time, I mean, mostly everybody was. No matter what God they were praying to, all of them were extremely religious. This was before science. And the brother is terrified of going to hell, as they all are, but he really seems to be terrified because of his brother's death. He thinks that his brother was in hell because his brother wasn't baptized. And to think that God would send a baby to hell because he wasn't baptized before he was killed is just kind of shows you where these people's logic is in their minds. God, these religions are so silly to me. And oh man, as I said earlier about the authenticity, like the way that they're loading this gun, like he sees the bunny rabbit, he wants to shoot it, and he like gets to the thing, he's carrying the big, I don't know what the hell to call this around his chest here. It's like Chewbacca's fucking gun belt. And he hands his dad the long freaking thing. He has to light it on fire so that when it hits, it catches the fire. I don't really know how those guns work all that much. I have a very vague understanding of them from watching like the History Channel and stuff. But it was definitely one of the most realistic gun firing scenes I've seen in a movie from this time period. So I really digged that. That they went that far to make it as realistic as possible. The twins in this movie are just so odd looking, and I want to say a lot of that has to do with the clothes they're dressed in. It just makes their bodies look weird. You know what I'm saying? When they're like skipping around, they just look creepy and off. And then Thomasin tells her little sister, one of the twins, that she's a witch to scare the shit out of her, which of course ends up backfiring on her later. She kind of just tells her to joke around and get her off her back. But yeah, as I said, it kind of comes back to bite her in the ass later. And so the mom wants to get rid of Thomasin. She's just like, you know, we'll push her off on another family. We're gonna get rid of her. And the dad is kind of true blue when he comes to his family. Like, he's trying to play both sides, navigate through this. He loves his kids, and he's really trying to work with his wife, who is basically pretty much from the beginning of the movie till the end, she's already have lost it, because we don't really get to know her all that much before her kid vanishes. And once her kid vanishes, she's just never right again. Although, who knows, she may have been like that before. So I mean, when she's talking to him a little bit, when they're kind of getting banished, she doesn't seem to be all that happy about it. I don't blame her. But we don't really ever see her being some loving wife that I'm like, oh, it sucks that their marriage had to fall apart. They were so in love. We never really get to see that side of them. So she may have been a bitch from day one. I mean, there wasn't a lot of people to pick from back then. So he just kind of was like, all right, I mean, I don't hate looking at you. And you want to have sex with me. So I guess we'll just get married. There was no like swiping left and right out back then. So you took what you got. And I like that when Caleb, because Caleb wants to save Thomas, and like him, they're like a match. Like, you know, like my brother and me are like a duo. My two younger brothers are like a duo, and my two older brothers are like a duo. We're all brothers, but like we kind of separate off into little duos. And so the Thomason and Caleb are like a little duo, and then the twins are, and the baby doesn't have anybody because he's fucking dead. And so Caleb's like, he wants to save her. He doesn't want his sister to leave, so he's gonna go out. He's gonna figure this shit out. He's gonna go bag himself a rabbit. He's gonna bring it back, and he even covers for his dad when his dad takes him out and says that they were out there looking for apples, which isn't what they were doing. They were off selling her whatever the hell, that bull or something. But yeah, so the brother goes out, and I like how they're just kind of like gushing over having seen glass once in a little town, and they're just like, oh yeah, it was so beautiful. It's just like glass. Like, people aren't even wowed anymore by almost anything. Like, you take them to the most insane visual experience in a film now, and they're just like, movie was lame. Effects weren't that great. And you're like, really? They see dinosaur bones in real life that are like constructed and put together in a museum, and they're just like, meh. Like, these guys are just fucking losing their minds over talking about glass, that they saw glass. Like, that's such a, you know, a novelty to them. They're just like, wow, this is incredible. Speaking of twins, I cannot believe that doesn't happen more often, honestly. So I should be proud of them, but I got a little visit from my kids there, so that's why I had to cut out there for a second. I'm just shocked that that doesn't happen more. So anyways, let's get back to this. So they're out there, they're gushing about this, but I thought it was interesting that when they go missing, speaking of twins, as I said, that we see the twins are leashed to a fence, which, hey man, it's effective. I once upon a time used to think like leashing your children was just craziness. I was like, they're not animals. But if you've ever had children, I'm not saying I've ever done it. I have never leashed my child. But I get it. They will run off in the most inopportune moments. You just be walking down the street with them and they'll just get cut across the street. I've seen it happen. My kids don't do it as much, but I've seen other kids do it. So my buddy's kid, holy shit, man. Well, that kid, if you let your eye off him for 1 second, he does everything in his power to try to kill himself. So leashing the twins to the fence there, I thought that was pretty funny. And I completely understand. So Caleb goes running after this rabbit and gets himself lost in the woods. She's knocked unconscious. Thomason is knocked unconscious after she falls off the horse. And Caleb goes off and finds the little hut buried. And there's a beautiful woman who lures him in and starts kissing on him. And then, you know, they're like, where the hell's my kid? They're blaming it on Thomas. And of course, the mom wants to blame everything on her. She thinks she's been bewitched and works for the devil now. And Caleb arrives back at the house in the nude. So I guess he got lucky. And so they try bloodletting, which was like the premier freaking medical procedure of the time. Let's just let a little blood out. We'll get the bad blood out, and we'll let the good blood back in. That doesn't work. And so he's laying there, and it's where was I? I had something else to say before I go on to that point. Shit. Yeah, fuck. Yeah, so there it is. Yeah, so Caleb coughs up an apple, and I have to think that this is taken from what, Grimm's fairy tales here with the Snow White, right? The little poisoned apple or something. He finds the witch in the woods and everything. So I know that he said that this is taken from all sorts of different folk tales, and I'm sure Grimm's fairy tales come from folk tales as well. So I thought that was an interesting little bit there with the apple. We also get bloody goat milk in here when she starts milking the goat, which I thought was a really creepy scene as well. And we see later in the movie the witch drinking from the goat's tit. So I don't know if she's like drinking the blood of the goat or whatnot, but yeah, she's sipping at it. And yeah, the dad tries to keep, like, he tries so hard to defend his kids up until he finally is like, all right, Thomason, like, I'm blaming you. So then she tries to blame it on the twins, and so he goes back in the house to interrogate them to see if there's I don't know if he's trying to see if there's any merit to her story, if there's any validity to it, or if he's just trying to be a smug asshole who's proving his point, like, look, these are just kids, you know, it's you. But I don't know, he pulls one up, and then he decides, like, no, for sure, like, Thomason, it's you. And but then they kind of start screaming out, so he doesn't know what to do, so he takes them all three and locks them in the barn and nails them up inside of there. The mom then has like this freaking weird fantasy where they go in, they try to bury the kid. She's like laying down in the grave with the kid. But then she goes up and she starts having this fantasy that her son and both her sons, her older son Caleb and then the little baby, are back, and she lets the baby suck from her tit, and this raven or something is just poking at her tail, plucking, pecking. There we go. Poking, plucking. I don't know what the fuck to say there. Pecking at her tit. That was such a great moment. It was just like pulling the skin off. More bloody nipples. More blood coming from nipples here in this movie. And so the dad wakes up in the morning, and because the witch is in there, she's sucking on the blood, and she laughs, and then the dad comes out, and he sees him. And all that's left is just Thomason laying there. Everything's broken up. The goats are all mangled, and we don't really see the twins. I don't know really I'm guessing they're dead. I don't feel like we see them. Am I wrong on that? Like, we're just to be led to believe they're dead, right? I don't know. But yeah, we see the goats instead. And then out of fucking nowhere, here comes Black Phillip to boom, take out the dad. And the dad tries to fight it again for a second, and it just pops him back and kills his ass, and wood falls all over him. And then the mom attacks the daughter, and they get into this fight, and she regretfully has to kill her mother, which is really sad because she's like hugging her mom after she's like stabbing her in the face like 6 times with this little I don't know what the hell that thing's called. I ain't no fucking farmer. But she racks on her face a little bit, and her mom's like dead bodies laying on top of her, and she's just hugging her and crying, and which is, as I said, is really sad. And then yeah, I mean, it really just kind of moves into the ending here, and she goes in the house. She then comes back out to the barn, and she confronts Black Phillip and is like, talk to me, this and that. And then Black Phillip actually does start talking, and he takes on a man shape, which I'm going to guess this is the devil. He says, do you want to live deliciously and see the world? And she says, yes, yes, yes. And he wants her to sign this book, like signing over to his soul to him. And she doesn't know how to write her own name because she hasn't been educated properly. And he will guide her hand. As long as she has the intent, that's all he needs for her soul. And then she goes off naked into the woods to find a coven of witches who are all, some of them are on long pieces of wood, which would, probably be where the broomsticks came from. And they all start flying up into the sky, and she starts to lift up into the sky as well because she is one of the witches who signed herself over, and it ends. So I don't really feel like there's a lot of interpretation there. I mean, she signed her soul, I guess, over to the devil of sorts, and now she's a witch. And she flew up with the other witches who have done other terrible things. I mean, we see the one kills her baby brother, rubs the shit all over, and she gets to fly. Then the real hot one, who's with her brother, gives him a poisoned apple, I'm guessing, and that's what makes him die. The brother has like a really weird erotic moment with God at the end of his life. Am I reading that correctly? It was very weird. He's like, oh yeah, take me. And he's like almost orgasming. It was really fucking weird. But it was just a profound moment, right? And I'm just perceiving it as orgasms because that's my own filling in the blanks there, my own perverted blank filling in. But yeah, so I don't know. But it just seems pretty cut and dry. Outside of that, guys, it was such a great rewatch. I've already said enough. I'm not going to just continue to keep repeating myself here, but now it's time for you to tell me your thoughts, of course. I think I already told you what I think that a lot of you will say who don't like this movie, but I know there's a lot of people who love this movie. It was fucking praised like crazy when it came out, which of course puts it a huge target on its head. It happened with It Follows. It happened with Babadook. It happens to a couple films every single year. It had just recently happened with Hereditary. Anytime that a horror movie gets tons of critical praise, it just becomes a film that a lot of people want to hate, because they always go in with these expectations that it's gonna like scare them to death. And typically, if you really are paying attention to like a lot of the films I just mentioned, like The Babadook or Hereditary or The Witch or something, they're very slow movies. They're very well done. Like, critics don't like extremely fast-paced, insane horror movies. They're just never going to like those movies. I can't think of one that's been liked like that. They're always like very slow-paced. Even something like The Exorcist or any of that, by today's standards, that movie's very slow. Amazing, and I will review them soon enough, but critics don't like super fast-paced movies when it comes in the horror genre. So next time you see that critics love a horror movie, expect it to be boring, as you would say, if you don't like the movie. Anyway, all right, guys. So Monster Monday's over. I have a bunch of other witch movies I'd love to watch. So and if you want to check it out, I already did all the Warlock movies, which is kind of witchy. I did Halloween 3, The Season of the Witch. I've done some witch movies for sure, but I'd like to do some more, so I'll get to those. I'm rambling at this point. All right, guys.